Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, and I'm your host. And tonight we are going to be talking about the intersection of mental health and criminal justice. And this has been an issue that has plagued the country. It goes coast to coast, the heartland. Every state has had problems with it. Many people are unaware how badly the mental health system fails the people who need it, and unfortunately the criminal justice system is left to pick up the pieces. And in Virginia, we've had a lot of experience over the last 10 or 12 years with this, going all the way back to 2007 with the Virginia Tech massacre and the fellow there who needed help and didn't get it. We go on to the settlement in 2012 from the Department of Justice with Virginia saying we needed to deinstitutionalize people, get them out of our training centers, but there wasn't any funding. So we're trying to adjust people to coming out into the community with no place really to go. In 2013, there was the terrible incident with Senator Credeeds and his son Gus, who needed treatment. There were no beds. He ended up slashing Senator Deeds, and then he killed himself. So there are lots of these things. They are continuing on. It has been an enormous problem. And tonight, I've got a number of folks who are involved in solving this. And so I want to introduce my first two guests. First is Stacey Sheriff Kincaid. She is the Fairfax City and County Sheriff. She is a 30-year veteran of the Fairfax Sheriff's Office. She was first elected in 2013 to fill the unexpired term of the retiring sheriff, and during her campaign, she talked about mental illness and made that an issue. She was re-elected to a full term in 2015 with 58% of the vote. Since her election in 2013, she's become a visible leader in the efforts to reform how the criminal justice system interacts with mentally ill people. We have from the Fairfax County Police Department, Captain Matt Owens. He is the commander of the Planning and Research Bureau. He has been a member of the force for over 20 years. He is on the problem-solving team of the Diversion First leadership group. And I want to thank you both for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedules to come tonight and share some information. What I'd like to start with, because people don't know anything, and so when you say, here's how we're doing it today, they think, oh, that's really good. But how is it done in the past? So when you go back to the time in the 2000s, I mean, what got people involved? What got you involved, Sheriff? You had it actually as part of your platform in 2013. What got you interested in all of this?
It goes back to the late 1980s, where as a young deputy sheriff, I had the opportunity and experience to work in the jail, and walking the hallways of the adult detention center, I would equate to something of working in a psychiatric hospital without the appropriate resources that we needed to help individuals who were mentally ill. And to see folks deteriorate, decompensate, and just not receiving the treatment that they needed, it was just barbaric. So that was part of my, drive, initiative, and motivation to help try and fix this system of, again, jail should not be the default when it comes to folks that are in need of treatment for mental illness.
Captain, what about you? I mean, you've been in the police department for over 20 years. What was it like back in the prior to 2010, so to speak?
So prior to 2006, we really didn't do a C.I.T. program like we have today. We trained our officers when they came through the police academy. They received some mental health training in there, but nothing to the extent that we do today.
So let's explain for the folks what C.I.T. means.
So that's the crisis intervention training.
Okay.
This is a mental health program that today we use a Memphis model. But in 2006, what happened was we implemented some training at the police academy where it was initially started as a 3-day program. And that program, we realized, covered a lot of the key topics. However, it didn't cover everything that we needed it to. So it expanded to a 5-day course at that point. That was initially a collaboration between the Fairfax County Police Department and the Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board. And at that time, we expanded it to a 5-day program until 2011. And at that time, the Memphis model was adopted by the state. That had proven to be very successful. The training was very similar. That training encompassed more, it encompassed a lot of what we did, but it also added in a lot more role playing and things of that nature so that we could absolutely train our officers to know how to respond when they encounter it in the field. So the initial training that we had 43% of our patrol officers trained on that. Since 2011, we now have approximately 22% of our patrol officers trained. Chief Rossler has said that that's not enough. He wants 100% of our officers trained. The state recommends 25%. Our goal is to have 100% attend this training and be aware when they encounter somebody in need of services on the street, how to interact with them.
So CIT training, as I understand it, it's the 40 hours, and it's expensive. Does everyone, all the rookies at the academy get the training when they're in the academy?
So, when a recruit attends the academy, they don't get the full CIT training course, and it's recommended that after 2 years, I mean, that's what the policy we follow, that we offer opportunities for staff to receive the certification.
Okay.
We're a little bit different because along with the CIT training that we too, because we go to the same public safety academy, criminal justice academy, we have been able to tailor that CIT training to our adult detention center and, for individuals that are incarcerated. So aside from what is taught out on the street, we've brought that and taken that a little bit, that a step further. I can tell you that from a training perspective, all of my staff, in addition to CIT, will receive the mental health first aid training, which is an 8-hour course.
I took that course. It was really enlightening to learn about the different symptoms of different types of mental illness and what you ought to do and not do, because there are a lot of taboos about dealing with people who have mental illness. You don't want to make it worse.
Right.
And that mental health first aid training sort of gives you some real basic tools to not be, I think, so concerned that you might do something wrong and make it worse. I think that's really good. Well, what about with your guys? Do you, with your officers, do they also wait a couple of years before they get
We have a mental health awareness week at the academy that encompasses many of the same principles that our CIT course encompasses the full state certification program. We want officers when they graduate the academy, although the state recommends for the state certification to be 2 years, we have officers as soon as they graduate have already been through much of the same training, the de-escalation techniques, the officer safety techniques, how to bring down a situation without using any type of force or anything like that. They receive that training in the academy, so they're aware when they hit the street, they are ready to go. That's where we want to recognize that we absolutely are committed to getting 100% of our officers trained on this. And so they do. We emphasize this training now, much more so that back, as I mentioned many years ago, that we didn't do. We certainly emphasize that training now.
Well, how often do your officers out on the street actually come in contact with mentally ill people where the CIT training is something that they need to draw on?
Well, in 2016, we had over 3,500 calls for service that involved those in need of mental health assistance. Of those resolved in the field were 1,959, and with 1,000, and when I say resolved in the field, that's one where the officer handled it while they were out there on the street. That we involved the Merrifield Crisis Response Center. We had a total number of 1,580 that actually utilized services there.
So that's a substantial number of interactions that your officers have with people with mental illness.
Yes.
Okay. So what is CIT training enough? I mean, I always hear everybody talks about it as if it's and particularly the Memphis model. Is it considered the best practice? Is there other stuff out there that ought to be done?
You're right. You are correct about the CIT model, the Memphis model being the best. I would say that any additional training, and as I mentioned a while back, we have contracted with someone regarding a contractor regarding use of force training, and again, within that use of force is also de-escalation training as well. So I would not say that CIT is enough. I think that there's always opportunities for training, but anything that involves the awareness and the ability to communicate with individuals who are, again, very vulnerable and often don't have a voice.
Okay. Well, how do you, particularly in a non-confinement area like your officers are in, how do you maintain officer safety? That has to be first when you're dealing with anybody in the public. So when you're dealing with these folks, the 3,000 plus people, have there been reports of major injuries? Have their officers, are there incidents of violence that, how dangerous is this?
I would say that the officers, when they go through the training, they're trained on the de-escalation tactics.
Okay.
And what that is all about is getting there and using your verbal persuasion to accomplish, to get the results that we need. Many people are just in a state of crisis, and at that point, you just need to talk them through it and overcome that state of crisis and bring them down from that elevated situation or that elevated emotion they're experiencing at the time. So the way we handle it is through talking, and voice tone would be just one example of maintaining a calmer voice tone, and try to talk them through this moment of a crisis that they're having to get them to a point where we can get them the assistance that they need.
So we're going to talk more later in the show about Diversion First itself, but I'm assuming that not all crimes are eligible to be diverted. So what kind of crimes, when your officers show up, they can actually look and say, this person is having some kind of mental crisis and he's eligible or she's eligible to divert?
Well, primarily we'd be focused on misdemeanor crimes would be the top one, but what we're focused on is crimes where it's clear the individual committed the act because they are in need of mental health services beyond somebody that had the intent to go out there and do harm to someone else or to somebody else's property. The ones that would be eligible are the ones where it's the person's clearly in need of services, of mental health services, to prevent this from occurring in the future, because perhaps they didn't even have the intent at the time to commit the act because of their need for mental health treatment.
So if the person doesn't want to go for treatment, what is the officer's option there?
The officer can divert them through the Diversion First program to the Merrifield Crisis Response Center. If they don't want to go there, ultimately we can obtain an emergency custody order in the field. We can work with the Merrifield response team to obtain that emergency custody order. I'm sorry, the officer can take them into emergency custody order for a period of a few hours, and then we can work with them to obtain a temporary detention order after that.
And that's because the person might be a danger, isn't it danger to yourself or others, or unable to care for yourself? There's some standard for that.
Correct, yes.
Okay, interesting. Well, we are going to be back in the next segment. The sheriff is going to stay with us, and we are going to bring on someone from the Community Services Board to talk about Diversion First and how it got established. And so I hope you will stay with us. We have lots more information for you, so we'll see you when we come back.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
I dare you. I dare you to change the world. Yeah, you. Getting that college education.
I dare you to be somebody important.
Like be a teacher or a reality TV star.
I dare you to stand up here.
To call the shots.
To be a role model.
An inspiration. An innovator.
To be a teacher.
Think you can change my life?
Make me excited about science like you.
Have a career that really means something?
Then do it.
I dare you.
They say you don't have to be so strong. But this is my mother, my purpose. Strength is not optional. See, I lift her now like she raised me then. So I know my strength is super, but I'm still human.
Look who's here.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
And we are here to talk about the intersection of criminal justice and mental health. Sheriff Kincaid is continuing with us, but we have now also been joined by Laura Yager. She is the Director of Systems Transformation for the County Executive Office, where her primary focus is on the Diversion First program in Fairfax. She has over 25 years experience in prevention and treatment, focusing on community capacity building, mobilization, community strengthening, and now also the merging the primary and behavioral health aspects of people, because we're not all just physical or all just mental. So she's going to do her best to try and pull that together for us. So thank you very much for coming, Laura. I know you spent many, many years actually officially with the CSB, and I guess you still technically have some title with them, but I liked the title, Systems Integration, because it seems to me that Diversion First requires a lot of that. So, Sheriff, I want to go back to you because I know, as we said in the first segment, you were very interested in getting something set up. When you first became sheriff in 2013, there was no Diversion First. You talked about how bad things were in terms of how the mentally ill people were in jail when you were first starting out. Were you able to make any changes, or did you have to wait?
So the changes that I made immediately after I was elected, one of the first changes was changing the release date. Typically, the release date the release time. Release time was 1 minute after midnight, a time when there were no resources available. If someone didn't have transportation, if they didn't have a home to go to, it made absolutely no sense for us to release someone in the middle of the night. So we changed the time till 8 o'clock in the morning, which is much more reasonable. We connected with our community partners, and through collaboration, we've got resources readily available at that hour when folks are released.
Okay.
One of the other changes I made was to create a housing unit for our female population who had mental health issues, the same as we had for the men. So by moving the females to a location that was actually much more therapeutic in terms of being adjacent to our behavioral health providers, as well as the cells were much bigger. There was natural light coming in. The lights were able to be turned off at nighttime. Just made a lot of sense. Yeah. And then, of course, we implemented telepsychiatry because we don't have the luxury of having a psychiatrist available, during the week for the entire week. And then, of course, it was the changes in the staffing hours for our CSB behavioral health staff, where the hours were much more realistic, which extended into the evening and also weekends and holidays.
Oh, good. Okay, so now you've made some changes. What brought the concept of Diversion First to your attention? Did we all in Fairfax create this out of whole cloth, or how did this come about?
This came about, my dear friend, former Sheriff Susan Pomerleau from Bexar County. I knew of the work they were doing in Bexar County,
is Texas.
And they had a nationally recognized model dealing with mental illness, substance abuse disorder, and homelessness. So I gathered a contingency from Fairfax that included staff from the Sheriff's Office, the Police Department, the Community Services Board, and the news media, and we all traveled to Bexar County to learn exactly and see firsthand what it is that they do, how things work, and then bring back the best practices to Fairfax in order to implement our own program.
So the program in Bexar County, which is San Antonio, who ended up being the stakeholders here? I know the CSB is a stakeholder, but who else are stakeholders?
So, go ahead.
Well, we have, after the group returned from Bexar County, we really decided that a stakeholders group needed to be formed. We have people from the Sheriff's Office, the Police Department, the courts, judges, public defenders, prosecutors, just about anyone involved in mental health, behavioral health, criminal justice, or law enforcement. We started out rather humbly and had an invitational meeting, and since that first meeting, which is just over a year ago, we now have 180 stakeholders who are signed on, actively participating, coming to quarterly meetings, and very engaged in this process. So it has continued to grow.
And I'd like to just add to that, in addition to those stakeholders, we also included the consumers, which is very important to have representatives, and as well as other groups such as NAMI and other groups, nonprofit groups. So we just opened it up, and as Laura mentioned, we're very fortunate that we have over 180 stakeholders now.
Wow, that's hard to manage, I would think. Describe this intercept thing for me, if you would, Laura.
Sure. Almost everyone who is working on diversion efforts focuses on something called the sequential intercept model, which sounds quite heady. But really it looks at points throughout the community and throughout our systems where people with mental illness might interact with the justice system. So, and they're all numbered, but at Intercept 1, that's really the community level. So where a law enforcement officer might come into contact in the community with someone, where you might be at the grocery store and come into contact with someone who's having a mental health crisis. So we wanted to wrap interventions around that intercept, and that's really where most of our focus has been. The intercepts go through 1 through 5, goes into the jail, the magistrate's office, where someone might first get booked. That's somewhere else where someone with mental illness might be identified. Then into the jail, again, they may be identified there. Upon release of the jail, when they're in the court system, and also throughout the community once they leave the criminal justice system.
So the Merrifield Crisis Response Center, MCRC, got set up January 1, 2016. I think to many people's amazement, because I believe it got announced like the prior August or something, and everyone went, wow, can you really stand it up? It goes up, and is the first year just the first intercept?
We have focused on all the intercepts, but our concentration has really been because this is really a preventative model. Our goal is really to identify people and work with them before they penetrate deeper into the criminal justice system. So most of our focus in the Fairfax Falls Church community has been at Intercept 1. The workforce training that I think you've heard about.
So what is that for people who haven't?
Well, with the crisis intervention team training, really standing that up, following the Memphis model, with the goal of getting a large percentage of our law enforcement officers trained. The mental health first aid training that you've heard about, we have trained in the last 12 months over 1,000 people in the general population, and also every magistrate's been trained. 50% of the sheriff's jail-based staff have been trained. All the juvenile intake officers, which is like a juvenile magistrate. So many, many specialized groups throughout the justice system have been trained. All of the administrative folks at the courts have been trained. So our goal is to spread the awareness around so that they can begin to identify people wherever they are.
Okay. Now, so what, in terms of how things stand right now, you've got the MCRC, you've got a police officer who brings somebody there, and then in our next segment we're going to have both an officer and a deputy who work at the MCRC. But what is the CSB? Because it's in a CSB building, so what is the CSB portion there? Who are those people?
That's a great question. So the Merrifield Center, which is centrally located, was really built with this in mind, to have a crisis response center there. We didn't have the resources to do it. So our emergency services is there 24/7, along with a full array of behavioral health services. But if somebody comes in, so you've heard about the law enforcement piece, they're really going to go to a mental health clinician. The person will be seen and assessed to determine what their needs might be, and to really look at the presenting issues, to figure out, does this person need to be hospitalized? Do they need just a period of time to stabilize? Do they need some crisis care? The job of that clinician is really to determine what they might need, working with the person, working with law enforcement to figure that out. If they need to be hospitalized, that clinician will make that recommendation.
And then if they recommend it, then what happens? Does it get done at the Merrifield Crisis
Well,
Center?
there's a whole process that involves both law enforcement and the clinicians going through a civil process. A person may say, yeah, I'll go voluntarily, and we will help them. Our staff, the CSB staff, will help locate a hospital bed. Law enforcement staff will help get them medical clearance. There's an entire lengthy process that a clock starts, but if a person will go voluntarily, that's awesome. If they won't go voluntarily, then there's a civil process to help them get hospitalized.
So if you're going to, when you mention beds, I mean, when we started the show, I mentioned Senator Creed and the Sun not being able to find beds. Are there really beds available for these people? I mean, if you're going to divert somebody, you have to divert them someplace. If they're not going to come to the sheriff's place, how do they get diverted? Where do you find these things?
Well,
are they all here, or are you shipping them someplace?
There are psychiatric hospitals locally and throughout the state. So part of with mental health law reform has been to establish a bed registry. So when someone needs to be hospitalized, the CSB staff begin to hunt for a bed and work that process. And if they need hospitalization, of course we want them to be hospitalized locally if that's possible, but it's not always possible. And then there's a whole nother process, and I don't know if you want to talk about the transportation.
Well, that's what I actually was just going to say, is how do they then get from the Merrifield Center to a psychiatric facility for help? Is that something, since Laura just deferred to you, I'm assuming this is your deputies handle this?
That's correct. So we are very committed to this program to the point where we take care of 99.9% of all of the out-of-area transports. I know that within last year's stats, we traveled over 31,000 miles to transport an individual to a psychiatric hospital that may be down in Williamsburg, it may be further than that, and again, each transport involves trained CIT certified deputies.
Okay, and so you take them to wherever these hospitals are, and then your folks check them in or something, and then come all the way back. Doesn't that divert your staff for a long time? Some of these, a trip to Williamsburg is not 45 minutes. That's a long time.
That is a long time, and yes, it does divert our staff, but again, this is something that is important to us. I mean, we are a partner in this program, in this initiative, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Wow. All right, well, we are going to go and take a break, and both the sheriff and Laura will be back with us for our final segment. But in the interim, we're going to have one of the sheriff's deputies and one of the police officers who are at the MCRC come in and talk to us about actually what happens if you're brought there. Stay with us.
Strawberries? Okay.
Okay, so what would you bring to my company?
What do you need?
I need problem-solving skills.
I got through high school without a car, a phone, or a computer.
No college degree, though.
Not yet, but life's taught me a lot, and I'm ready for more.
Well, you're not the typical kind of candidate that I hire. But you are exactly what I'm looking for.
Your company could be missing out on the candidates it needs most. Learn how to find a great pool of untapped talent at gradsoflife.org.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. This is the 500th edition of Inside Scoop. So you are here with us as we make history, and we are moving on to really the nuts and bolts of what goes on over at the Merrifield Crisis Response Center. It's an awesome name. It sounds very mysterious. And so what I did was I brought two law enforcement officers who started over there when it started last year to tell you what it's like and to really talk to us about the kind of people who are being brought in so we can get a better understanding. So we have with us PFC James Milito. He is with the Fairfax County Police Department. He has been there for 14 years. And we have Lieutenant Derrick Ledford of the Fairfax Sheriff's Office, who has also been there for 14 years. It must have been a very good year for law enforcement.
Absolutely.
So thank you both. I know you have full schedules and you're taking extra time today to come and talk to us about this. So let me back up, because you both started there. It opens the door and there you guys are. How did that happen? How did you end up going over there?
Well, it started for me when they asked me to be a CIT instructor. And so we started teaching the crisis intervention training to the officers. And I saw this as an opportunity that was something very worthwhile as a reform in mental health, and the police department taking a proactive action to really help work within that community and to try to find a solution that works better. So I thought it was be an exciting opportunity to really just help just change some of the stuff that we were doing with the police department and working in the mental health community.
What about you, Derrick?
It all started for me when we had the opportunity to go down to Henrico County. They actually talked to us about our CIT program, about improving it and doing some things differently, becoming part of the state and being certified. And they actually brought some of their Henrico people in to give us a background on what they were doing as far as their program. So after that, obviously, you get volunteered for one step, and then you go to the next. And it's been good though. It's been really good.
Okay, now I did want to ask, and you're both CIT trainers, right? Instructors?
Correct.
So I always think of CIT as just mental illness, but I heard when Laura Yager was on the prior section, she talked about Bexar County and mentioned substance abuse. Is CIT training also pulled into not just mental health, but sort of more broadly, anytime somebody's behaving erratically, whether it's because they are drunk or on drugs or have mental illness? How broad is the training?
Well, what we've come to learn in the program is that an individual that may have a mental illness, sometimes they self-administer different type of substances just to deal with the illness. So obviously to ignore that altogether, knowing that actually happens, would not do our program well. So we got to kind of take in the mental illness, and also if there's some type of substance abuse disorder along with that, those go together most of the time. So.
Okay. So explain a little bit about when people talk about CIT training, what are you training the guys on and the women on when you get these folks, they've been out, maybe on the job for a couple of years, come back in for this? What are they going to learn?
Well, they come in and one of the first things we start talking to them about is the destigmatization of mental illness, that it is an illness and that nobody asks for that illness. And it is truly something that can strike anybody from any walk of life, and to be sympathetic and empathetic to the situation that they find themselves in that they didn't ask for. They get some training on identification of certain medications which are predominant in the mental health community, so that they can identify if there's a possible mental health issue. They also get some training as far as from different doctors coming in and talk to them about different mental illnesses and what those illnesses entail. Along with, they also have some clients themselves that come in, which I know is really good for the students, because they get firsthand information from the students or from the clients on how interaction and their previous interactions, if they've had interactions with the police, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, and getting to see them as people first and not just somebody they showed up to and the person's in a state of crisis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then these de-escalation things, is this typically just figuring out how to calm them down, or
Well,
what does that involve?
Well, actually, what that involves is we have different stories, situations, incidents, I guess you can call them, throughout the state of Virginia. We've taken from Henrico County and other regions, some in Fairfax County, and we have some very good CIT trainers that are good actors. So we actually take those actual incidents and kind of act them out. After all the training that the officers officers and deputies, we then put them in front of this particular incident. We give them the usual dispatch call, whatever that might be, and it might be something very simple. And we have them go in and say, hey, this is your scenario, go ahead and do your thing. And then they go in, and it might be myself or Milito acting as one was maybe autistic, and obviously that is not put out on the dispatch, but that's where the officer has to come in using their de-escalation skills, using the information that they learned, and go at it and try to make a determination that either this person has he committed a crime, is there a mental health issue here, what avenues of approach can I take? So.
Well, and I like, Derrick, that you split the two of, is there a crime and does the person have a mental health issue? Because having a mental illness in and of itself is not a crime.
Correct.
I know people get worried around people who are mentally ill because you don't really know how to react and those types of things, but it's not a crime.
No.
There has to be something else going on. So what happens when you've got a police officer on the street, he gets that call, and I understand, by the way, for our viewers, I want to make sure they know, if you have somebody where you think they have a mental health issue, you can ask when you call in to say, hey, I need somebody who's CIT trained, so it can give your dispatch people
That's correct.
a heads up. So you can ask for that.
Absolutely.
And my understanding is the staffing is so that there should be somebody always on who can respond, hopefully. So they bring them in to the MCRC. You guys are there working your shift. What happens?
So when they bring the person into the MCRC, usually the first thing we start doing is we try to get them settled. If I can do something as simple as get them a glass of water, people are in a state of crisis. Some of the most simple things that the most of us take for granted on a day-to-day basis are really big when somebody's in a state of crisis. Mental health issue or no mental health issue, sometimes we forget just some of those basic communication skills of giving a name, getting a name, meeting somebody on their level, and just being personal with somebody. Once they get in, they're settled, and one of the clinicians will come out and they will interview them, and they will make a determination on what level of treatment is needed. It could be as simple as outpatient follow-up to a therapist or program. It could be crisis care, which is an inpatient voluntary place that's here in the county. Or it could be as restrictive as a temporary detention order, which hospitalizes somebody temporarily because they're believed to be a danger to themselves, maybe others, or unable to care for themselves due to their mental illness.
Okay, so just because somebody comes into the MCRC and they think they have a mental illness, it's not like the deputies are going to have to transport 100% of those people who are determined to have it. You referenced they could get referred to like a private therapist type thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So just because you come in doesn't mean you're going out with us.
Okay.
So we're just there to facilitate getting you to the help. And if we're needed to facilitate the next part of the process, if somebody is unable to help themselves because they meet those criteria that I mentioned before, at which point one of the MCRC staff, myself or one of the deputies, will, if available, take custody of that person and then begin the medical clearance process.
Okay, so what is involved in a medical clearance? You guys don't do the medical clearance, right? You're law enforcement.
No, absolutely not. The
so
individual,
who does that?
Well, the law enforcement officer at Merrifield actually takes custody of the individual. He takes him over to Fairfax Hospital, most likely. It's the closest hospital. And there, the doctors there, they are pretty used to the routine. The main thing is for them to run different types of tests on that particular individual, because if they are going to be hospitalized and go to a specific hospital, that hospital sometimes does not have the capability of rendering medical services. So they want to make sure that that hospital that they're going to they want to make sure that the person's in good health and there's not going to be any kind of medical issues. So it's your basic tests, all right? So.
Okay, so that's the medical clearance to actually go and get admitted.
Okay.
Now, do you need a medical clearance if they've decided you are going to go to the jail? You just go to the jail.
No,
right?
you just go to the jail. There's
Okay.
there's medical staff there, so they'll definitely follow through with the same thing. So
okay,
make sure they're good.
So you get this medical clearance, and the person is going to go someplace to a state hospital, and that's where you all take over and get them to where they need to go. And then the police officer continues to stay at Merrifield. The other police officer goes back out on the street some point.
Well, I could tell you that the local hospitals, which include Dominion, Fairfax, and we even go over to Virginia Hospital in Arlington. Sometimes we go out to Loudoun and also Mount Vernon. And the deputy and the police officer there, they're able to make those transports to those particular hospitals because they're fairly easy to get to, and then they can make their way back to MCRC. The long distance transports is what really the sheriff's office concentrate on. Unfortunately, that happens quite often because the hospital beds, which I believe Laura talked about, is usually pretty used up.
Yeah, pretty used up. Well, tell me about the kinds of people that come in, because folks always think mentally ill people are the crazy folks you see on movies or things like that. I mean, what kind of people do you see coming into the MCRC?
Like I was saying earlier, we see folks from all walks of life come in, anywhere from your mother, father, children, sometimes homeless, vets. We literally see there is no one walk of life where people come from to come to the MCRC. Mental health does not discriminate between any walk of life. It can literally hit anybody at any time, and sometimes it can be a long-term battle. Sometimes it can be a short-term battle, depending on what you're going through at the time.
Yeah, the folks at MCRC law enforcement officers and the CSB folks, but speaking from the law enforcement aspect, you're wearing a lot of different hats. You become personal with the individual, yet and still you're law enforcement. You have to keep that in your mind. The interaction places you in a moment where you're physically connected to the person, because there is some physical interaction sometimes, and then you're emotionally connected to the person, and mentally connected to the person, because it's all about establishing that rapport to kind of create an atmosphere where things can move in a productive way to get that person the treatment that they need. So, very draining.
Okay. Well, I thank you for coming in tonight. It must be tough because someone coming in and seeing law enforcement folks. I get nervous when, frankly, police stop me in my car. So I can't imagine with you guys. But thank you for coming and for all the really good work you're doing, both in the CIT area and in the mental health area. So stay with us. One more segment to go on money.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, Hard, what's this? That's my resignation. You're resigning? Why? You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit. Oh, I forgot. I'll do better. Please don't quit on me.
Don't let your heart quit on you. Get your uncontrolled high blood pressure to a healthy range before it's too late.
So you can't save money? That's easy as pie. Brown bagging lunch instead of going out. $6 save times 5 days a week times 10 years is $21,000. That's a lot of lettuce. Small changes today, big bucks tomorrow. Feedthepig.org.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally. I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands? My son has lots of dolls.
But did you know terracloth diapers breathe better?
I did. It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that. Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the final segment of Inside Scoop, our 500th edition. This is on mental health and criminal justice, and we're going to talk money because we've been talking about all these great ideas, and we've now got Diversion First going, and we're doing all this great stuff, but none of this happens without some money, and so we're going to talk about that. So as I understand it, and we are joined, I should tell you who's here because you'll recognize them immediately, is Sheriff Kincaid, Captain Owens, and Laura Yager. And that you guys all work together. You're all on that leadership team that we talked about, Matt, about you belonging on as well. So you're all really involved in this. I did want to ask, and I forgot to, so let me just cover this real quick. How, with 180 some odd stakeholders, how does this cooperation work? I mean, typically you get lots of infighting.
Well, you're absolutely correct. The chairman of the Board of Supervisors, Chairman Sharon Bulova, and Supervisor John Cook out of the Braddock District are part of this leadership team, and certainly I credit both of them as helping us get people together and seeing how it works. I think once people see that, then they're just, you know what, they're more encouraged and enthusiastic about being part of something that they're seeing good results from.
So you've actually brought the prosecutors around. They're typically, you know, lock them up, throw away the keys kind of people. They're all good?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, let's see what we're doing here, because it sounds like Diversion First is a program that gives a lot of people hope. So as I understand it, and I'm coming in at the end of this, but as I understand this, it was set up so that there was going to be 3 years of funding. And so the funding came in, the program got stood up, you started working on all the intercepts, as Laura had said, but primarily you're working on the first intercept because they go sort of sequentially. But when I looked at the Board of Supervisors budget this year, I didn't see anything in there for Diversion First. Is this program ending? Did we not get funding for year 2? What's the deal, Laura?
The county executive's advertised budget did not include new funding. So our year 2 funding that we had put out in a 3-year plan.
Okay, and how much was that, so we know what we're talking about?
About $5.3 million, okay. That's an approximate, to further expand into the other intercepts to focus more wholly on the court system. That was not in the advertised budget, and it's a challenging budget year, as we know. So the funding that they had provided previously does not go away. So all the work we're doing will continue. But to move in the direction we wanted to go, and for our plan, I believe we had about $5.2 million for year 2 of funding. We've done a lot of work trying to sort out what's needed, where we want to go. For example, we're seeing huge increases in caseloads with the court services staff. When we want to not have people with mental illness in jail and we want them out on supervised release, there need to be people to supervise them. So with these increases and changes in practice, we have resource needs. So a lot of people have come together to do work on what are the key priorities. And what they are is to add additional law enforcement staff at the MCRC to get us to 24/7 coverage. We're not there yet. To add some additional court services probation staff to do supervised release, and to add some clinical staff from the CSB to really work on those pre-court assessments to get the court's information about people with mental illness as they go forward.
Okay, so when you initially did the budget that had the 3 years and you had this whole plan you were going to do, there must have been some things that were in the plan for year 2 that might have to be deferred. Are we scaling it back, or do what we have at the MCRC, does that stay and the rest of it just slow down? Are there specific chunks of this that you say can't do, either I don't have the staff for it, or court services, which, as I understand, court services is probation officers? Is that what we're talking about with court services?
Yes.
Okay. So are there certain things that are not going to go forward?
That's That's part of the discussion, and again, it's about the priorities. And again, the staffing at Merrifield is very significant to ensure that we'd love to be able to operate 24/7. So,
what's the current operation hours if it's not 24/7?
Currently, they start at 11:30 in the morning and it goes till 2 a.m. And we do have an overnight shift that we are able to staff, although it's on an overtime assignment. It's not necessarily always there, but we try to staff it as often as we can. And it is 11:30 a.m. or 11:30 a.m. till 2 a.m. the following day.
Okay.
And to answer your question, we would continue. We're going to continue to provide the services that we've been providing there. We're committed to this program. The numbers that I mentioned earlier, it's been a very successful program, and we certainly want to continue with it.
Okay.
And we've come quite a long way since January 1st of 2016. I think further along than anybody would have ever imagined, because this is something that is very new, yet we've known for a very long time that the way that mental illness is, handled in our community, in our county, is just not acceptable.
Right. Well, one of the things, and I know that the CSB has sort of been talking about it. There was a stakeholders meeting that I attended. It was mentioned there about, I think it's called Housing First as part of Diversion First. And it seemed awfully important because as we've talked throughout the program, if you're going to divert somebody, you have to have some place for them to go to. Whether it's either on the entryway towards the jail or when you get back out at the back end. Is that something that you're going to be able to continue with the CSB?
We have added housing resources through local budget and through some state funding for Housing First, because we know that if we have someone in jail or involved in the criminal justice system and they're homeless, their needs are great, and their basic needs are not getting met: food, shelter, and so there is some funding. We are able to house some folks. When we talk to our partners at the court system, they're all for diversion, but they want to know that they're diverting that a person is in a safe place and has somewhere to go. So it's vital that we can house people. So we have a small amount of resources. Some of the budget for year 2 was some additional housing funds that is not on the table at this time.
Now you also divert, because I said when they on their way in and on their way out, but you also, after somebody gets to the jail, there's some way people can divert out at that point, even though they've already been booked in, right?
Right, and that's the work that's done between the magistrates, between the judges, and between court staff, as well as our staff.
Okay.
To take it a step further, when we're talking about resources, within the Adult Detention Center, we have many programs, and again, focused on when someone gets ready to get released. A preparation for release, focusing on getting someone employed, getting someone housing, getting someone transportation, getting someone an ID, a government ID. And we have initiated, and I believe you know about a couple of them, we've had our inmate resource fairs, at least 5 of them, since 2014, where we're bringing in vendors from the outside and connecting the vendors with our inmate population that's getting ready to get out. And they, of course, can work with them once they get back out into the community to ensure that we continue to move forward with assistance for housing and jobs, and just be able for them to be successful when they get out of.
Okay. So there are other programs that might not technically be considered Diversion First that can provide some services to these folks.
Yes. And it includes the reentry initiative.
Well, let me ask you about one thing and I want to hold up my copy of this because I want to tell everybody you need to go to the county website and look for Diversion First. This is their annual report, and it has amazing, amazing information on the results that they've achieved in the first year. They're really phenomenal. They've got a whole little thing at the very end of statistics. You can't read it because there's so much of it. But go and get this, because this is really, really impressive about what they're doing. But they also did a survey after the first year. I guess Sharon Bulova sent it out that said, what do you think is really important for the second year? And the number one was a mental health docket. Now, we don't have mental health courts. We don't do specialty courts in Virginia. We do dockets. And I know that Fairfax has a veterans treatment docket, but and it cost a lot, and it took a lot to put that together. So is a mental health docket one of those things that we're just going to have to wait on, because without funding in year 2, it's got to go down on the priority list because things like reentry, things like the housing, all of these other things have to take precedent over something like that. Because we have the judges. It's a question of, do you just continue to train the judges without creating a separate docket? Is that where we're going to end up?
Well, one of the things that we have learned as we've gone through this process and in partnering with the courts is we have a great opportunity to influence folks at pretrial. So before someone has been charged, or after they've been charged, but before they go to trial, there's a period of time, if someone is on supervised release or going through that process, when we can influence encourage people to get treatment, to refer them to court services as part of a court order. So our judges have been really helping the stakeholders understand that this is a prime time. So we've focused a lot of our efforts there, and it's part of why we're identifying a great need to expand our court services staff to be able to do that and to be able to have that level of influence at that intercept. I don't know that a docket is out of the question, but I think the level of opportunity we see at the pretrial services is just great.
Okay.
So.
And I would also say that, just adding to what Laura said, I don't think it's out of the question, and I do know that we are going to continue to be proactive in learning as much from other localities such as Miami, Florida. Also, I know Norfolk has a mental health docket, but we're going to continue to learn as much as we can because I do believe one day we will have a mental health docket.
Okay.
And you had mentioned earlier as well are the prosecutors or the Commonwealth's attorneys involved in this as well, and they've been to some of the meetings, and we've certainly met with them and discussed the programs with them as well. And they're also committed to trying to get people the best services or to get those in need of services the best help possible.
Well, and I would think too, if you can divert, because you talked about the low-level offenses, if you can divert some of those people who really would benefit off, it also helps them in their offices to focus on the more substantive prosecution where you've got injury to a person and those kinds of things. So it makes a whole lot of sense that they would try and do that.
And they have been to both our Commonwealth's Attorney Office as well as the Public Defender's Office as well as private attorneys have been to every stakeholders group and are actively participating. We also have a court stakeholders group that is formed, and they're very involved in that process as well.
Wow. There is so much more that we could talk about. We have barely scratched the surface tonight, and hopefully we can have everybody come back 6 months from now and talk about the better progress they've made and how everything's gotten wonderful. I can say what they can't say, which is there's a tiny, tiny amount of money not allocated in the budget, so I'm hoping that those of you who care about this issue will get a hold of your supervisors and make sure that Diversion First is somewhere on that budget priority for that tiny, tiny bit of money that's left. Thanks for watching.